Welcome to Bigfoot Society. It's time for this week's comments and call-ins episode where I share my favorite comments from YouTube and also my favorite call-ins from the weekly Bigfoot Encounters live show over on YouTube, Saturday nights at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So hope to see you there. If you've got a Bigfoot encounter you'd like to share, email me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And if you'd like to have extra Bigfoot Society content every single week, you can become a supporting member over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, we are back with another episode, what I'm going to call comments and call-ins. So I'm going to share my favorite comments from the YouTube channel throughout the past week, and then I'll share some of the call-ins that happened last Saturday night. So here we go. All right, starting off with a few from the Berkshire's Massachusetts episode. Georgia Patriot puts down an interesting comment. I had my up-close encounter in 2013. He was over 10 feet tall and almost 5 feet wide. I was on one side of a fire ring in my yard, and he was on the other side, about 12 feet away. And there was a big hunting dog that came to my home from time to time, and that's who he was really mad at, I believe. When he roared or screamed at us, it felt like it shook the bone marrow in my bones. I was in a lounge chair, and the force pushed me off the chair. Then he leaned over, facing the dog, and as loud as the first roar was, it hardly compared to the second. The dog rolled over and, I'm going to say, urinated everywhere, and he was frozen. It's a long story, but we both survived. It ripped trees out of the ground and broke many more. I had watched Harry and the Hendersons, and I'd seen Patty as a kid, but Bigfoot never entered my mind. I had seen a mountain monster. I had my cell phone in my hand with earbuds in when this started. But at some point, I dropped my phone on the ground. My home was about 10 to 15 yards away, and once I got in, I hid in the corner away from all windows for 3 days with no way to contact anyone. Luckily, a co-worker came by to check on me after I kept missing work. I never thought I had seen a Sasquatch until 2020 when I heard other stories online. That night changed my whole life, and I had a real hard time for the first 3 years after that. I never went outside at night for that time, and honestly, I rarely go out at night now. I had bad nightmares and was always scared. I was hearing things outside of my home at night. I have not gone near the woods except when riding down the road in a car. I stayed in that house for another few weeks until my mother and her boyfriend were staying at my place for a few days. And he had a medical emergency, and we had to call out the EMTs for a heart condition. While the paramedics were there, they told us I'd always wanted to see the inside of the house I was renting because a few years earlier, a bear had broken the back door and killed a mother and daughter in that house. I moved the next day. I've searched for that story online, but couldn't find it anywhere. But why would the two guys lie like that? I never thought of man or ape when I saw him. Not sure what that sentence says, sorry. His face was so distorted when he was roaring at us. It's hard to imagine how big these things are until you see one. Another thing that really messes with me is how I know for a fact they're real. So why are we not being warned and educated about these things? We're being lied to by the people who are supposed to be looking out for us. I don't know what to believe anymore. Is every monster story real? Be safe and stay near people when camping. It's a fantastic comment. I can't imagine what you went through, my friend. Please, I'd love you to reach out to me. You can email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. I'd love to talk to you more about what you experienced. And there were a few comments responding to this comment that were pretty interesting. Missouri Explorer comments, I had a close encounter with one of these entities back in 1998 while solo night fishing. It changed my life forever. If you haven't gotten right with Jesus, I highly recommend that you do so immediately. God help us all. Missouri Explorer, I'd love to have you reach out as well. First of four says, wow, that's absolutely terrifying. I had very similar experience in 2002. I happened to be in a tent, so I didn't get the visual part, but I did get the absolute otherworldly scream, roar, and breathing growling at me from about 4 feet away. It was huge, and I could see a little shadow outline from the moonlight. Anyways, it took 3 steps into the crunchy leaves and literally vanished. Had other sightings and experiences, but nothing like that one. I really thought I was going to die or go out shooting. I figured if it was going to kill me, it would have tried, and it didn't. I actually hunted and camped there several more times over the years, and nothing major happened. It was just pissed because we had just bulldozed a road 2 miles into its territory, apparently. Well, that's why. And this was also in eastern Tennessee. That's also why. I'd love to hear from you too, my friend. Feel free to reach out via email. Moving on to another comment from the same Berkshire's video. Harold, and if it's a person's name in the comment, I'm just going to say the first name part of it. The federal government is afraid to get the good old boys living in rural America will go hunting these cryptids. I'm going to try to read the next part best I can. Sevierville is nothing compared with activity being reported from Cosby and Newport Town. You go into Max Patch Mountain in McDowell County, North Carolina, and there's a lot of werewolf, dogman, and Bigfoot reports from Max Patch, Spring Creek, and Hurricane Creek areas. Well, guys, if you know stuff from Max Patch, Spring Creek, and Hurricane Creek areas like this individual is talking about, please reach out to me. Same way as I said before. And Harold, I would love to hear more from you as well. Joseph leaves a comment on the grizzly bear snapping grizzly bear next episode. I've heard stories of Bigfoot pixelating. When Bigfoot sightings increase, so do UFO sightings increase and vice versa. That I believe with. Look into Chestnut Ridge, Pennsylvania. Continues, they sometimes appear after orb sightings, as do angels and aliens. Could it be possible that these creatures are terrestrial workers, possibly collecting flora and fauna for extraterrestrial visitors? I know there's a 10-foot specimen here in the southern Appalachians of North Carolina, or Appalachians, I should say. Depends where you're from. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer. My neighbor saw it 10 years ago, and I found 4 footprints it left, 8 to 10 inches, or 8 to 10 feet between steps, left me astonished. Oof. Going back to the Berkshires episode, this one is very interesting from user Chris. I think the word it spoke, how TJ said it at first, like Enoch, sounds very similar, or Enoch, sounds very similar to some of the words in the Sierra sounds. It does sound like Enoch, but I think the manner in which they speak, with the tongue to the roof of the mouth, produces a lot of sounds just like that. But who knows? Maybe they were giving him a clue. That is very interesting. I'm going to have to listen to the Sierra sounds again and see. In episode 424, which is actually the last Saturday's comment episode. Yeah, it was. Combat Culture says, I've been hooked on Sasquatch Chronicles and this show being Bigfoot Society. Some people get that confused in the comments. They think this is some other show. It's Bigfoot Society. So thank you, Combat Culture, for realizing that this is Bigfoot Society. So I've been hooked on Sasquatch Chronicles and this show. By far the 2 best shows on YouTube. Thank you, friend. I've listened to so many to see if anyone reports one like me and my family had in the West Virginia hollers where we're from. And I hadn't heard anyone report a glowing chest on a Bigfoot because that's what we saw. Wow, I've never taken a report that has a glowing chest on a Bigfoot. So Combat, reach out to me. You know how, friend. Back to the Berkshires, PC Lathrop says, I had a Class B on Mount Race or Mount Riga, summer of 89 on the Appalachian Trail, the mountain that has the privy on top, wood bangs and moans. Interesting. Would love to hear more about that. Back to episode 424, Isti Van Praha. Oh, the Catskills. Some parts have luxury houses with rich NYC people who seem oblivious that there are 3 to 5 miles of woods behind their houses before the next road. I hope they stop building there. There are so many wild areas that get wild quick because they're not easy to get into. Drive to the parking spot, then steep incline, rugged footpaths only. Not really for lazy strolls. You know, that is such a great point. And there's a lot of the episodes where it's like on the outskirts of large cities. People usually leave comments like, "Oh, what is this guy talking about?" Well, here's the thing. These areas on the outskirts of cities were the last areas to be woods before they had houses built. So, I mean, logically, yeah, you could still see some Bigfoot in that area. Something to think about. Back to 423, the Berkshires. Arthur says that's why I say those 8-footers are babies. When you see a 12 to 20-footer, then and only then you will be in my world. North Minnesota, be safe. They can feel your energy. If you're good, friends. Arthur, if you're seeing 12 to 20-footers, I would love to hear more about your experiences. Please reach out. In episode 424, Joseph writes, I know this is a Bigfoot channel, but I had an experience with something in SoCal in 2022 that forever changed my reality. I don't know if it was a reptilian shapeshifter or what, but it definitely opened my eyes to the whole paranormal thing. I always believed in these creatures and ghosts, but until that happens to you, then it's life-changing. Well, Joseph, I usually talk just about Bigfoot, but I'd love to hear about what you experienced, and maybe we could do like a special members-only episode. Because at the end of the day, I am trying to keep this Bigfoot focused on the channel, make it the best channel for Bigfoot encounters and Bigfoot interviews, but I think I'd still love to hear from him. We might be able to make a special members-only episode. Scorpio BW puts an interesting comment on a short that he put out about the police officer in Pennsylvania episode. Goes like this. My mom and I saw one in Northeast Maryland when I was a kid. We lived in a very rural area. There are 5 to 6 houses on our little dirt road, and we were all surrounded by deep, deep woods. Everyone back there hunted and had hunting dogs. They all kind of ran in the pack. It was summer, and my mom was on the back porch, and I was outside playing. It was early morning. The dogs took up into the woods behind our house. A few minutes later, they came hauling back down out of the woods, screeching and yelling. Then we heard this primal scream. That's the only way I know how to describe it. I looked up and saw this huge black animal-looking thing standing on 2 feet at the edge of the woods. My mom picked me up by the back of my shirt and threw me into the back door. I specifically remember her locking it. Now, years later, I'm 40, and when I ask her, she remembers it. She will say she didn't know what it was, but it scared her. And I remember it too, I believe, 100%. I can't imagine that. That must have been absolutely horrifying. If you remember more details about how the Bigfoot oh boy, I'll keep it in there. It'll make for some good comments. Jeez, be nice, guys. If you remember more about how the Bigfoot looked, I'd love to hear from you about it. User George replies, I'm from Western Maryland, Washington County, and I've heard about the wood boogers, the booger man, hairy boogers, etc. This is an area that I haven't really heard of, Washington County and Western Maryland. But George, if you've got some accounts to share about that area, feel free to reach out. Going back to the grizzly bear episode, 421, Distant Whaler shares this. I live in Livingston. Custer National Park is all the way over by Billings. Something doesn't add up. Livingston is on one end of Paradise Valley and Gardner is the other. Things that are being said are not adding up. I've lived in Paradise Valley since 2003 and never heard of any of this. And I'm a bartender. I hear everything. One time I heard the claws were taken off a grizzly bear, which was obviously done by a man collecting grizzly claws. Other than that, no. Well, the way I look at it, friend, if you're not hearing things, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not happening. But if you ever do hear anything, I would love to hear about it. Back to episode 424, the last call-in. Star Junkie 5328 writes, the reason they're kept secret is because they cannot control them. Then the public would want the military involved. Then the people would ask, so what else have you been hiding? You can apply this to UFOs as well, or anything they're hiding. Believe me, it's not the forest industry or that we'd have to protect them. These ancient people do not need our help in any way, shape, or form. They are our masters. They own us. Do not go looking for them. Well, I don't know if Bigfoot own us. I'm going to say agree to disagree on that, but I am going to agree with you that I think the government has a little bit more knowledge than most people would think. If anyone has any ideas, any things they've heard about the government being involved with Bigfoot, put that in the comments, please. I'd love to have some interviews about that. User Hung Down Low 12 writes, they're keeper of the earth, humanity, that's hard to read the way it's written, but I'm going to try my best. They are keeper of the earth. Humanity does nothing but take from Mother Nature without giving thanks consciously back. Seems to those who have encountered have that problem of taking. I've been to their realms of consciousness. I raced one across the field as I kept pace with him. He smiled at me and gave me a thumbs up. I'm a tribal member of Rocky Boy, Montana. So my connections to Mother Earth are very strong, even though I was adopted the day I was born, to a military family who worked on a device that could destroy humanity and its portals to other higher dimensions. Friend, why don't you reach out? I have a feeling that you have some interesting accounts to share. On the Rainier, Oregon episode, John shares an interesting comment. We live in Connecticut, the other side of the country, and we had one look into our kitchen window twice, scaring the daylights out of my sister. After the first time, my father, 82nd Airborne paratrooper, set a trap in case it returned, thinking it most likely was neighborhood pranksters. He kept a hose turned on and placed near the kitchen door. When it returned the second time, my sister screamed. My dad ran past her, grabbed the hose, and sprayed the Bigfoot. For this, it lunged at him. I remember him yelling at it, hey, hey, trying to scare it off. It turned and went back into the nearby tract of protected watershed property of about 2,000 acres. After this, he bought a instrument and kept it and had a box of ammo near the kitchen door. Guys, I don't know what algorithms are going to be. I don't want algorithms to be, triggered. I can tell you one thing. If it did come back, knowing my father, it was going to end up in a display case at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut, or maybe at UConn. John, that is an interesting account. I would love to talk to you more about what happened. Please reach out. Episode 420, my re-release of Ronnie Roseman's episode from Oak Ridge, Oregon. Dagmar says, the next time you go out will be your last. Just saying. Okay, one, that's not really nice. Or maybe you're just trying to be honest. So I would love to hear more. Why do you think the next time you go out or go back would be your last? I'm curious to know what inside information you have. Episode 424. Cope says, hey man, have you had any encounter stories of anything in the northeast corner of Kansas or the corner of northwest Missouri? I'm curious because I live in Doniphan County. Okay, so listeners, if you know anything about those areas, let me know. Put it in the comments, please, to help out Cope. One I can remember. I've been looking into it. There's a this is in northwest Missouri, I believe. It's a wildlife management area. It's called Monkey Mountain, and there's been a few Bigfoot sightings there. I mean, just the fact that it's called Monkey Mountain is pretty wild. So, hey, let me know if you've had a sighting in Monkey Mountain or near there too. Put that in the comments. Rainier episode, Terry says, never heard anyone describe how large their mouths are. I think they tore their things up because they cut the trees. I think you're absolutely right. I've taken enough accounts to know that if you have Bigfoot on your property and you start to do yard work, you will soon find out that you have Bigfoot on your property, because they will be very, very not happy for that. Going back to episode 423 in the Berkshires, Frank says, "Cool, bro. Love to hear the local ones. I'm in Mass myself." Hey, all right. Guy's a great storyteller, believed every word. One thing I found interesting is when they said the word Enoch, it rang a bell. Have you heard of Janice Carter from 50 Years of Bigfoot? She said she would hear the same word from them and that it translated to food. Interesting. If people know more about 50 Years of Bigfoot, please put that in the comments. User Kristen shared a nice comment. "I go to bed at 5 p.m. because I feel old, so miss the start of the live videos." Okay, this is coming in on the one of the call-in videos. "I'm usually listening though to your other posted videos for that same night while I rest. I have zero to share Bigfoot-wise, but do live in Grand Island, Nebraska, and sadly missed the conference." Oh man, you lived in the same town. "I think since they moved it to Grand Island, they have opportunity to keep this conference growing. Maybe we can get you here next year. I think there's a good chance that I will be coming out there probably next year to visit. Thank heavens we also missed the tornadoes. Glad to hear you were also safe in Iowa. This message is totally pointless, but we seem to have those three things in common lately. Bigfoot conference in my city and horrible weather. Stay safe and keep doing what you're doing." Well, thank you, Kristen. That was a very nice message. And next year I'm going to be doing a lot more showing up at different conferences and festivals. So be ready for that. Here's a fun one from the Berkshire episode from user Hopeful. "Hi, everyone. My name is Donna, and I'm 65 years old. First of all, I really enjoy your podcast and the experiences shared. I'm just an ordinary person and not too sure if these events were Sasquatch related. My mom and stepdad lived in historic Lenox, Western Massachusetts, not far from Great Barrington, for many years after they retired. Many weekends I would go from Rhode Island to visit. So oftentimes I would go for an early morning power walk. On one of these mornings, I believe on a Sunday morning, 2005 to 2006, I went for a walk around 6 to 6:30 a.m., and I walked down a road that went out of the village into a heavily wooded area. On my way back, I suddenly noticed a very strong odor of which I can only describe as an old wet dog. I was terrified like only one other time in my life, and that was in New Brunswick, Canada. Oh my goodness. New Brunswick, Canada. Back to the incident in Massachusetts. As I started to try to figure out what I could do to save myself from an attack from something wild, I remember that I didn't hear any sounds of anything walking in the woods. No crunching of leaves, snapping or twigs, nothing. I was too terrified to look behind me in the woods, and I say behind me because I sensed whatever it was behind me right inside of the tree line to my left. One or two cars had driven by, but my only escape was to cross the road. The terror I felt was primordial. I thankfully made it back unscathed. Again, I never heard a sound. In New Brunswick in 1989, same thing. I fell behind a group of us picking some type of nut that was ripe at the end of August, I believe it was. I had a huge bush full of nuts that I couldn't pull myself away from. Suddenly, the stench of wet, nasty old dog, nothing against dogs, and terror that I had never felt before. I stopped picking at that bush and hurriedly caught up to the people I was with. I did not hear, and I dared not look behind me. Both in Massachusetts and New Brunswick, I thought it might have been a bear or coyote. Until last year, when I started listening to Bigfoot podcasts, I realized that many of the encounters of countless people in my experiences were very, very similar. The terror that came over me so suddenly was just as many people described experiencing. In 1976 in northern Vermont, while walking in the forest with a friend that I was allowed to visit during April vacation when I was 16, we came across 4 deer legs strewn about on a bed of pine needles. There was no sign of a struggle, blood or fur. They looked snapped off, nothing else. Very strange, but we'd never thought much more about it. One more questionable incident was 1981 in February. I was hiking and camping with my ex 200 miles south of El Paso in the Chihuahua Desert. We were sleeping in a two-man tent, flaps open to allow the heat from a small contained fire to keep us a little warmer. I woke up to the sound of something approaching the rear of the tent. It came right up to the rear and released its breath, which literally warmed the air inside, no stench or fear. It then just lumbered away. I thought a steer or a horse, which in retrospect makes no sense. We spent almost 2 weeks in the area. We were nearby Big Bend Ranch State Park. However, at the time, we didn't see any ranches or wildlife. I wish I could remember if it sounded four-legged or bipedal. We were armed, and he's an expert marksman, so I felt safe. We never talked about it the next day or ever until recently. Now we both really wonder. I've been aware of Bigfoot, but as most, I thought they only existed in the Northwest Pacific, and they never entered my mind until the past year. Whew. Donna, thank you. I know you've reached out through email as well. Thank you for sharing those experiences. Very, very interesting. Let's continue with a few more comments from episode 425, police officer episode. User Jonathan comments, I'll tell you all this at my hunting camp, maybe 30 to 40 years. I'm just going to leave it in. Maybe 30 to 40 yards away, I heard a man yell. I immediately zoned into where it was in the deep brush, and the yell morphed into a roar that I can only describe as a lion times 10. I physically felt a sound wave hit me and rattle my organs. Words can't do justice to that physical effect I felt on and within my body. My dog took off running, and I stood there maybe 5 seconds after being covered in chill bumps, trying to see what did this. I mean, it was so close that I snapped out of the shock. It was so close, but then I snapped out of the shock, and I ran as fast as I could. I haven't hunted in 9 years, and I can't go back in the woods. If you've experienced something like that yourself when you're hunting in the woods, let me know. Put what happened to you in the comments. Another user, Jolie, says, how do I get in touch with Matt? I had a sighting near the Poconos. There are ways to contact Matt. If you look at the description for the episode, there's a few ways, a few of his social media accounts there. Same episode, user Richard says, I live in Warren, PA, literally the heart of Northwest PA. Been fascinated with Bigfoot since I was probably 8 years old, and I'm now 59. I personally have not seen anything, but I've heard so many stories. I would love to hear those stories, my friend, if you would want to reach out to me, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Deme writes, you would think if Bigfoots were this smart, or if Bigfoot was this smart, they would be smart enough to use and coach other animals, coyotes, against humans, to warn them of humans instead of humans and coyotes working together. Ironic. Okay, so personally, I think there might be a little bit in play there of, I think coyote and Bigfoot do work together sometimes. Let me know in the comments if you agree with the thought that there might be some working together with Bigfoot and coyotes, or do you think they don't work together? Let me know if you have any ideas. User Paul writes, after watching a ton of Bigfoot video and looking at the artist's rendition shown, I think the scariest ones are the ones that look human. The ape-looking ones aren't scary to me because they look a lot like the pretty things you see at the zoo. Same with the Bigfoot recorded sounds. Some really have a human quality to them at times, and that is scary. I think you're absolutely right, Paul. I've never had a visual sighting myself, but let's see. So I'll probably be freaked out no matter what I see, right? But if I was to see a person or something that, if I was to see something that looks more like a human or has human-looking features, I would be pretty freaked if I saw something that looked like King Kong or a big monkey. I might be a little freaked. I wouldn't be extremely freaked like if I saw something that looked like a Neanderthal. I don't know. Let me know in the comments What would freak you out if you saw it? Would it be a monkey type looking one or a human type looking one? User Scott said, I had a visit while camping in a tent at Moraine State Park in 1980. I could never identify what I heard running in circles and growling like the Tasmanian devil on 12 while ripping tree branches down. When I heard the Patterson-Gimlin Sierra sounds, I knew right away, and definitely what I encountered that night. Well, thank you for sharing. The Patterson-Gimlin, that's not connected to the Sierra Sounds. Sierra Sounds is Ron Moorhead, just so that we have that, straightened out. But end of the day, you had a very interesting encounter, and thank you for sharing. Episode 426, which is Barb in Puget Sound, Washington, or not in Puget Sound, guys. I had another person comment, there's no Bigfoot in Puget Sound. Well, yes, there's no Bigfoot actually in the waters of Puget Sound. It's in an area by Puget Sound. Okay. Anyways, user SKR, feeding them works. Native American woman used to give them big baskets of fruit and vegetables to keep the peace. It worked. Wow, that is quite the statement. If you have actual accounts of that happening in history, I would love to hear that. If you could reach out to me, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Same episode, user Bama says, wow, we must live close because I've had all the same activity. The horses, the frogs, and the babies and other things. Oh, Bama, you've got to reach out to me. If you're having the same activity that Barb is having, I'd love to talk to you. It sounds very, very interesting. Especially since if you read through the comments, it sounds that Bama is 30 minutes away from the Florida state line, but yet having the same things happen. Bama, I think we've got some talking to do. How about you start out by reaching out to me through email, and we'll see what we've got. Cynthia also writes, I didn't believe till I saw. Well, Cynthia, I'd love to hear what you saw if you would want to reach out. Patricia also writes, thanks, Barb. I'm in Olympia, Washington. My grandmother told me about the Siatko when a small child. Patricia, if you're up for it, I would love to hear the stories that your grandmother shared to you about the Siatko. If you'd love to hear more about the Siatko, you can read any of Henry Franzoni's books. An old friend, Joseph, on episode 425, the police officer episode, has an interesting idea, and I want to know what people think about this in the comments. He writes, a trail cam is like an unblinking eye. Animals take unblinking eyes as a threat. I believe they're intimidated and scared of them because the lens doesn't blink. That's very interesting. Thank you, Joseph. And let me know in the comments if you agree with that. On Barb's episode, Sharon writes, why don't they share the pics and video? Okay, so yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes I do, not all the times. I usually share them in the Patreon, patreon.com/Bigfoot Society. So you can see pics and video there. Also, Barb has her own Facebook group, so all of that is going to be in her Facebook group. Just saying. Let's see. Chrissy writes, I heard that they really love blue glass bottles or anything that cobalt blue color. That's a new one for me, Chrissy. I would love to hear where you heard that from, what account, and if anyone else has heard that, let me know in the comments as well. User Enemy172. That's an interesting account. What I learned from my 8-hour encounter with two of them 30 feet under my deer stand in the open the whole time. They knew I was there, and one would climb up the tree and try to grab my leg. I heard the way they communicate in so much stuff that no one has ever talked about. Shoot, it's been a few years, and I try to talk about it, and I get severe anxiety. They aren't human. They're apes. They aren't telepathic or what everyone says mind speak. Don't call people names. Be nice. They do not have infrasound. They don't hit a tree with a stick. They clack rocks together and use their mouths. If you see one, just know there's always a second one close by. I would love to chat with you about your encounter. If we can have a discussion without calling people names, just, be nice. But it sounds like you had a very interesting thing happen. I'd love to talk to you about it. If you are up for it, please reach out to me by email. User J Hermit, I had an encounter 40 years ago outside of Olympia. Love to hear about that. Please reach out. On the Barb interview, here we go. Carol has an interesting comment. This interview was really good, and the recordings she has are very cool, or really cool. That one sounded almost like a wild hog at first, but then it sounds like a big ape. In my honest opinion, she really needs to talk to David at the OP. Absolutely. I told her multiple times she needs to talk to David Ellis. He would love her recordings, I'm sure. The frog one reminds me of one of the OPs singing that Chris Spencer has. Yeah, definitely. Hey, Jeremiah, where's NAWAC's podcast? Is it on YouTube? They actually just started putting it on YouTube, but you can't find any of the new episodes. There's only one episode up there, so I would still listen to it on Spotify, but also subscribe on YouTube too. I've played their recordings for my grandson. He then knew I didn't joke about Bigfoot. He's 12, by the way. I've told him stories and told him to ask his mom about the one she's seen when she was his age. NAWAC's Ohio Howl recording brought tears to his eyes. It scared him so bad. Wow. She's got the right idea about cohabituate. See, I got issues with that word. You know what I'm saying. Keeping their space as theirs, and just every now and then giving them something for a treat. We never did that either. No treats for the Bigfoot in the big thicket. Oh, by the way, I'm a ham operator, and you should watch Dr. Tamitha Skov for her space weather forecasts. I think that's the reason why your connection with the past few guests have been the way they have. We're dealing with some flares, solar winds, and we're having issues with ham radio stuff, and either regular Earth weather affects cell and internet when we've been having these bad Earth storms. Correlate the dates with your interviews and see if that's the issue. You'd be surprised how all space and Earth weather affects our lives and computers and connections with it all. You probably dig Dr. Skov's podcast. It's very, very interesting. Thanks for another really great show, Jeremiah. Carol, great ideas in that comment. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to write that. Back to the police officer episode. NG Les Paul writes, and thank you for being a channel member as well, it looks like. Anyone here or know of any Squatch info from Broome County, Binghamton area-ish? Armchair researcher here, and the BFRO has only 2 encounters listed. Just curious and fascinated with the subject. 10 minutes from PA border with lots of woods. Love the podcast, Jeremiah. Guys, let's help out Les Paul. If you know of any Squatch sightings from around the Broome County area, please put those in the comments of this episode. Kyle, you sound familiar. I think, have I talked to you before? I'm not sure. It must have been a long time ago. Maybe you put some comments before. Aries was black with no hair on chest or stomach, and definitely a male, 8 foot, 600 pounds or more. My brother won't hunt anymore ever since. They're real in Vermont. This I know. Enough said. Kyle, I'd ask if you reach out. I want to say maybe we've talked before in the past, but I don't think we've had. From a comment from 306, Westland, Oregon episode, user writes, 2 encounters for me, one in Missouri and second one in Evans, Colorado. Would love to hear more about what those encounters were like. Please reach out. Let's go on to some more comments here. Back to Barb's episode. User Windwolf says that wooden woven hut you talked about in the beginning is probably the frame to a sweat lodge. That sounds like how we natives make our inapes or sweat lodges. Ooh, now that's an interesting thought. Jeffrey writes on episode 413, which I believe is Lori's episode. Loved hearing Lori's experience. I noticed she mentioned a nuclear facility. Bigfoot seems to be attracted to the power plants. Thanks for the interview. I've heard a few people notice or write that lately, where Bigfoot attracted to power plants. If you know any sightings, Bigfoot near power plants, let me know in the comments. I know that was kind of mentioned on the Rainier episode. Some more from the Rainier episode. Tap into Alignment writes, wow. This is so fantastic. Didn't want it to end. Thank you so much from Vermont. We have them here too. If you've got some Vermont things to share, please reach out. On Barb's episode DD, I have many different kinds go through, and a very respectful family nearby. And very thankful for knowing them, but was very afraid at first, but now know so many wish for respect. Now, that being said, not all alike, so when they see you and you show no respect, when you enter their home, it's all on you. And the mother showed this for me. She was so wise. DD, it sounds like you have a very interesting account. I'd love to hear more. Please reach out. Back to the police officer episode. Canadian craftsman, been in the woods all my life, 38, grew up in New England on the Appalachian Mountains. I agree 100% with the dogman sightings, being confused to Sasquatch. Me and two friends fishing back in 2012 had a paranormal experience we will never forget. All of us are outdoorsmen and we know what we saw. Please reach out. Episode 424. Joey writes, I grew up in southeast Oklahoma, less than 20 miles from the Choctaw Nation capital, and lived just outside of LaForgue County. Heard lots of Bigfoot and monster stories and various other legends, but nothing about a Bigfoot war. That's because it's not real. Attended several, possibly the first few, mid to late 2000s, Bigfoot festivals in Honabi, and never heard of the Choctaw War. Again, the Bigfoot Indian War, not real. It wasn't until recently that this story was brought to my attention. Joey, thank you for writing. That must have been very interesting growing up in that area of the southeast Oklahoma and hearing all of that. If you want to share any of these stories and monster stories, Bigfoot stories, things like that you've heard, please feel free to reach out. Let's see. Here's a cryptic comment that was left on the police officer episode. Mitchell says, you want to find them, South Beaver, Pennsylvania. And another gentleman, Joe, says, you're correct. I do my research in Northeast Ohio on the border. It's busy there. All right, guys, you got to give me more information. What's going on over there in South Beaver, Pennsylvania with Bigfoot? With Bigfoot things, Bigfoot encounters. Let me know what you're doing here. Kevin writes a nice comment. Thank you, sir. Kevin, you're doing a yeoman's work in this topic. I'm so proud of you and happy about the fantastic work you're doing. Happy to be a subscriber. Thank you, my friend. Here's another fun, nice comment from Colleen. This was so good. Love this podcast. I listen every single night while I make dinner and then when I do dishes at 11 at night. Love you and thank you because people don't believe in my world except for my husband and our son. Colleen, I hope that this podcast helps the time go by quick while you're doing dishes and making dinner. I'm glad I can help in a way with that. And guys, in the comments, let me know what you're doing when you listen to this podcast. I'd be curious to know. And don't say going to sleep because my voice puts you to sleep. If that's the case though, if my voice honestly puts you to sleep and that's how you get to bed, then that's cool. Let me know that too. On episode 413, Lori's episode from Blue Ridge Mountains, James, right, as a native of Charlottesville in the 60s, or a native of Charlottesville in my 60s, I spent a lot of time in the mountains of Virginia. They are out there, no doubt in my mind. James, you look like a guy from your profile picture that's seen some things. Reach out, my friend. Let me know what you've seen. Back to Barb's episode, Otto Tigfeed shares similar experiences in Stanwood, Washington. please reach out, my friend. Let me know what you've experienced. Let's see. I have an individual on episode 424 saying, I have a UFO story if you're interested. If you'd like to share via email, you definitely can. You may want to also share with a UFO podcaster as well. They could probably help you reach your story out to the proper audience where it can be a lot of help. But if you'd like to reach out to me, definitely. Back to the police officer episode. This is an interesting one from user Shane. Y'all know that you can 100% prove that Sasquatch or any other species on our planet is a distinct individual species with its own absolutely unique auditory range, with its own unique parameters that other species cannot enter into or imitate. I'm curious to know what experts in this arena have to say about parrots and starlings. I would predict this theory would not hold true when it comes to mimicking birds, and or Sasquatch for that matter, the master mimic, supposedly. I'm no expert, but I do have a BS in zoology and know, by common sense alone, that this inability of separate species to inhabit the same ranges of linguistic parameters as another different species does. This is about the most repeatable, testable hypothesis the world has ever known. Guess what? It absolutely proves that Sasquatch exists as its own separate, distinct species just by running a recording through some software that breaks down and analyzes sound waves. Easy peasy. Why do people have this weird belief that it's just an absolutely unproven mystery when it's all just a cover-up and it's easily provable to anyone? I've just never understood that. I guess the average man just isn't too bright, or at least they have a very range of interest and the very low tolerance for new paradigm shifts in what, okay, this does get a little sassy, but I'm interested to know what people think about this. It goes on. Yeah, I'm bitter. LOL. Later. Love your show. Looking to think or thunker on this subject if you want to learn about it. All right, Shane, you've got some really interesting thoughts there. I'd love to know what listeners think in regards to Shane's comment. Let's see. Oh, here we go. 415. Certainly Ontario, Canada, Rendezvous Mountain. Here we go. Great stuff, Jeremiah. It's from Jeffrey. I noticed Ontario gets 60% of its power from nuclear facilities. Sasquatch seem to be interested in those power plants. The black triangle UFO the gentleman saw was also witnessed by several police in southern Illinois near St. Louis, Missouri on January 5th, 2000. Thanks for all your hard work, Jeremiah, and thanks to the callers for sharing. Very interesting. From Monica's episode 411, Jeffrey also writes, Monica, thank you for sharing your encounters. You mentioned an urban encounter in Dallas. This does not shock me at all, as David Paulides has written an entire book on the urban disappearances and how they are often found in shallow water. The Elisa Lam video is very odd, and she ended up in the water tank on top of the Cecil Hotel in L.A. Very interesting. I don't know a lot about missing persons things. Going back to number 371, Swamp Dog episode, Eric writes, I'm from Turnersville, South Jersey, had 3 encounters in the 1970s. I would love to know more about your encounters in the 70s in South Jersey. That would be amazing. Here's a few that just came in. Episode 428. This is from, I want to say, the one that just released today, Friday. Yep. Bigfoot Beast of Wallowa, Oregon. Too much time in the woods writes, October is breeding season and the month with most activity in many areas. Oh, that's interesting. The breeding season I mentioned was related by a retired USFS Oklahoma employee who also claimed U.S. government knowledge of the animal. Great stories, and the sky is legit as can be. I wish him luck in having another sighting. Okay, buddy. Wow. If you can get me connections with this retired U.S. Forestry Service Oklahoma employee who's got this knowledge about the creature, about Bigfoot, I would love to talk to this individual. Please reach out to me at email, bigfootsociety@gmail.com, If you can make this connection between me and this retired U.S. Forestry Service worker, I would be forever thankful to you. Same episode. User Patty says, I live near John Day in Eastern Oregon. I discovered I have Bigfoots living on my 40-acre property. In September last year, at present, we coexist peacefully, and I take great care to respect their areas they claim as theirs and respect their structures, although I document those with photos. I'll be very interested in this gentleman's experience since Wallowa is close to me. Patty, please reach out. I'd love to hear about what's going on in your property. You can email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. User Richard, on the same episode, I had an encounter on the North Fork on the Santiam River. Richard, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear more about that. User JD's Modern Martial Arts. After the roar screams I heard and felt in Southern Oregon, I can't understand how people go looking for Sasquatch. I also would never be out there with just a knife or hatchet. Interesting. User Alicia says, I was in the Wallowa's same area last September in the Eagle Cap area. Heard 3 very clear wood knocks. Interesting. And we'll close out the comments with Bonita. Thank you so much. Always leaves really nice comments. Thank you, Jeremiah. Great episode. If you want to have a chance for having your comment read next week, go ahead. Make sure you put your comments in the episodes. I read through every new comment, and I'm always thinking, okay, what would be good to read in the next comments and call-in episode? I'll give you a hint. If you can share your encounter with a lot of detail, it's probably going to get read. Also, if you would rather send me an email, which is great, and if you want me to read it on the show, or you want to say, hey, if you'd like to, you can read this on the podcast, just let me know that in the email, and then also let me know if you want me to use what name you want me to use for you. But yeah, I'd love to start reading emails as well. Just let me know, hey, send me an email, let me know that I can read it on the air. It'd be a good time. We're going to next go ahead and play some interesting calls that came in last Saturday night. Now, guys, every Saturday night, I have a call-in show on YouTube. It's also put onto YouTube, or not YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. But if you want to really be interactive, go over to the Bigfoot Society YouTube channel, and 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday night, I get online on the live episode, and I have a call-in number. You can call in, share your encounter live. You don't have to worry about setting up a time. If you want to do it live, we can do it live on Bigfoot Encounter Live. You can share your encounter. It will be recorded for the podcast, all that. So there is a guest release form you have to fill out. But hope to see you next Saturday night, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Bigfoot Society YouTube channel. Let's get to some call-ins that came in last week. It is, who could this be?
To accept, press 1. To send a voice...
Hey, is this Roger?
Yes, sir. Is this JB?
Hey, bud. Hey, Squatch and Holler. Guys, let me know
How's
if
it
you
going?
can. It's going well. Let me know if you can hear Roger in the chat real quick. I'm so.
Yeah, because I'm not watching, so I'll just.
Did you see the beginning of the show? I had some crazy audio stuff going on.
No, I came in late.
Oh, you're good.
We were watching a movie, so.
All right, we got a yes. So hopefully you're watching a good movie.
It was okay.
All right. What's going on, man?
Not much. I thought I'd, call in and we could talk about, I was on one of your episodes, and I want to thank you for that because it kind of got me started in doing what I'm doing now. And so transitioning from being somebody asking a lot of questions to getting boots on the ground, so to speak, and having some things happen has been a wild year. So it's and listening to your show and people that have been having experiences for years. It's pretty amazing now that we can talk about it. And not being able to talk about it for years. So
absolutely,
it's been a wild year.
Absolutely. I mean, that episode was wild. Do you mind sharing a little bit about? You got to do some really cool things after that. You were involved at a conference.
Yeah. So I went on Jeremiah's show and just gushed. I was nervous. Just hadn't talked about some of the stuff that happened to me when I was younger. I saw one when I was 14. Had about a 30-second or so good look at this thing. It turned and looked at me and it wasn't concerned that, I was there. And I'd hunted those woods for, years before that. So I think it kind of knew me. I didn't know that then, but now, learning from all the people, it just wasn't concerned that I saw it. So got to see it walk up a hill, and I can go back with that now, knowing about some of the anatomy from researchers, and I've actually made good points to them because of what I witnessed. And so, yeah, it just had some weird stuff happen, and then went 30-something years without anything happening. And then it fired up again in 2020. And from, over the years, I had looked at YouTube like a lot of people. Didn't have anybody here in rural Tennessee to talk to about it. And so when things started happening, I was like, wait, is this what I think it is? So anyway, went from there, did your show, was nervous and scared, but Jeremiah, that's an easy process. He makes you feel comfortable and he takes it. So I know I messed up and said some wrong words, and he probably deleted those, but you don't have to worry about it if you come on the show. Just be yourself and tell the truth. So the first after that, the first Bigfoot conference I ever went to was July 22nd last year. And I ended up getting on stage and telling a little bit of my story in front of everybody, and got to meet a lot of great people. And from there on, I do interview people because the reason I do it, I'm like you, I have a ton of questions. Like, I didn't realize how deep this stuff went and how it's connected to other things. So I've been learning. I talk too much, but so I started a show so I could ask questions, and the way I say it, I put it is, look, we're going to have fun with this. We're going to laugh and cut up and have fun, but we take the subject seriously. And so some people, they get in, and I've done it. I've get the boots on the ground and the audio and the video, and things have happened, and it's stressful, and you have to, go over in your mind and talk to some of the experts, being new at this. And it can get stressful, and you got to back away sometimes. But since your show, when I told my stories, I have found, let me make sure I'm right, we found footprints in Bankhead National Forest. We found footprints in Lincoln County here. And in Land Between the Lakes, I found an 18-inch footprint along with some other 14s and smallers. It looked like a family walking through this mud. And little did I know, with the contacts that I've made over the last year, some great contacts just to fall back on and ask questions. I got a bunch of pictures sent. Said, do you know that you found similar footprints to these? They sent me, in Messenger, these pictures, and they did get them, casted, but about 3 years prior in the same exact spot. The only reason I found them was because we had a drought last year in the Southeast. and this bay that's usually full of water. Of course, we went back a few weeks ago for the meet and greet, and this bay is just full of water. I never would have found these tracks. I saw them from 80 yards away in the mud.
Wow.
And knew they were too big. And so here I go. And, you know, it's tough when you're by yourself. My wife and my dog was in the truck, and I wasn't expecting to find the type of tracks I did. I got them documented on video. That's about as good as I could do. But y'all, people tell you all the time, oh, you should have done this. I got made fun of because I didn't cast them. I could have had 100 pounds of casting material, and I wouldn't have done it by myself because I felt exposed out there. You know, when you find tracks this large, and of course I've got the luxury of seeing one before, but that was, you know, I'm 53 now. That's a long time ago. And we've had other stuff happen with calls and stuff like that, house. But when you see physical evidence, even knowing, it puts you on edge. So I got back. I did the best I could to get them documented on the video. And got back to the truck, and my wife, when I went down there, the windows were down, and I'm like, "Hey, you got me locked out. What's going on?" And she said, "When you were out there, a rock come out of the woods, landed, skipped towards the truck, about the weight of a golf ball." Ooh. And she said, "I was been watching the mirrors and I locked the doors." And I said, "Okay, if this ever happens again, that's the point where you blow the horn, start waving and get back here." But yeah, so it's been a journey, but I want to be involved in all of it, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, you heard the audio from, you know, last weekend, which was absolutely terrifying.
Can I play that right now?
Yeah, you can.
All right, because I have that. You sent it to me today, and I just uploaded it. So I'm pretty sure we can play it in here just so people can. It's fascinating, and then maybe you can give some background to what was going on.
Go ahead and play it, and then
All right,
I'll let everybody know.
Yep.
Does it? Yeah. That's too far away from him. Is that on his phone? Come here. No. Oh my God. Get up here. Get up here now. Is that wolves? Is that wolves?
Oh, no, come here. Yeah, it is.
All right, I hope that worked. Man, that audio though, guys, you gotta check out Squatch and Holler's YouTube channel because it's up there as well. But
the audio on the short, there was I'm not good at all this, but there was a way I could turn up the volume a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So the howls, you can hear the howls or the screams or whatever a little better. I couldn't hear it on the phone here, but I'll walk you through what was happening. There's a 30-minute video, and we've had things happen without recorders on. I've messed up. I've had some amazing things happen, and I've learned to turn whatever you have, turn it on, just leave it on. So yep. I decided, to turn my phone on. Well, not even 2 minutes, maybe not even a minute into this video is when this happened. So we took the lower road, and there was a couple up top. I thought maybe they were smoking a cigarette or whatever. This is outside of Sylacauga, Alabama. It's the place where, you showed me you had somebody on talking about the hunter that got shredded below the tree stand.
Yep.
This is about 100 yards from that incident. So we saw them, and we're the only four out there. Everybody else is at camp. There's a handful of people back there, and they're eating. And so I thought, this might be a good time. It's getting close to dark to go back here. So I turned my phone on, and I'm just doing a little chit-chatting. And all of a sudden, now when things happen, your brain process, it takes longer to tell what happened than it actually took to happen. So when I hear the first one, I whip around. I mean, you can see in the video, I whip towards it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, first thing I think is that idiot call blasting with all of us here in this, dangerous place. That's the first thought. And as loud as it was, he would have had to have a huge speaker, right? So, and these people, the wife was a non-believer. He had some things that had been happening around his house. So he was there to talk to a researcher, and they invited him down. So, the first howl happened, and, we stop in our tracks. It's just extremely loud, and it didn't sound canine at all. I've heard this before. I've had the sounds analyzed, and it came back possible, Bigfoot, booger, whatever, because of the signature that it leaves on the spectrograph. So I'd heard this before, but not that loud. And I asked a question. I start asking questions immediately, not to anybody in particular, but like, is that on his phone? And then I'm like, there's no way, because, that's too loud. Then the second one hits, it's an answer back. It's not in the same location. So the first one is at about 11 o'clock. Once I turn around, it's about 11 o'clock. The second one is probably more like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So when this thing fired off, it got a call back to the right. I don't know which way I was pointing, east or west or whatever, but so then this is all going through my mind, and I'm thinking, we've got to get back closer to camp. I think, I'm like, come on, let's go. So then I noticed the lady, I knew she was a non-believer. I'd talked to him before. She takes off running. And I think, I've got to get to her before she hurts herself, because she's panicking. And so I'm popping out of this brush type, sort of the woods and the trees. And I'm thinking, she doesn't see me, and it's darker than it looks like on video. And if I pop out of here, she's going to die, heart attack. So I had to say something to let her know I was a human coming out of the dark. And so I just as that wolves. She didn't hear me the first time. The second time she did. And she immediately, I couldn't understand what she said, something about help. And she takes off back to her husband, and he's just watching, just looking into the woods. And we get there, there's about, if I remember correctly, 7 or 8 answer backs, back and forth. It just went crazy. And so I got to him, and I'm asking him, what are you looking at? What's happened? He heard a growl before that started up. And he said it sounded like a chainsaw. So I'd asked him a few questions that I've learned about, and so it kind of fit the bill, of a small one trying to do infrasound, which sounds crazy, but Kumbo Baker had described that to me. I had some experience with that, and said it was too young, so it couldn't hit the low notes, and so you could hear it. Well, that reminded me of it when he said it, so we're talking. Well, then the coyotes fire up back towards camp, way back over there. They're loud, but as soon as they fire up, I'm like, oh, that's coyotes right there. There's no doubt. But these other two, long story short, we got back to camp, told what was happening. The next morning, I left. I didn't stay there after that. We drove 3.5 hours back from Sylacauga, Alabama, back home. We got home about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no, I'm not staying here. So I get it to my friend. He got a spectrograph, and he immediately starts analyzing. And it's the same thing as the one mid-year last year, just louder. And the signatures in the 400 to 600 megahertz range, but it's the signature, like a upside down Nike swoosh. He told me that a lot of the researchers, Martin Newbill, there's a lot of them that kind of are tied together a little bit, as it is across the country. They're tight-knit groups of researchers, in each area. They come to the conclusion that it's possible that these howls, that this signature doesn't fit any known North American animal. The signature, not the range. I misquoted that, but he said it's the signature that's the thing. And then he took the coyotes, and it's totally different. I mean, you can see it. It's so, I'm gonna go with his analysis because we just don't know. But I do know that I'm 53 and I've only heard that a couple times, maybe 3 times my whole life. And all 3 times it was the same sort of reaction. It's something that's not just normally out in the woods screaming, and it's just abnormally loud. I mean, it just, it was terrifying, exhilarating, everything wrapped into one. And I think I was more concerned about the lady tripping and falling and hurting herself, and that kind of took a little bit of the fear off of me. And they just didn't sound aggressive, if that makes sense. So anyway, it was a wild 30 minutes. And y'all, if you go out, the one piece of advice I can give you, now I've made these mistakes, turn the recorder on before you get out of the vehicle.
Absolutely. Yep.
And that way you have it covered. We had a scream one night in the field with us. We'd been here 3 hours. I gave up. I threw my phone and stuff in the truck. And an hour later or so, one of the most terrifying screams 30 yards behind us in the field with us at about 1 a.m. 3 witnesses besides me. One won't talk about it because she ran and locked everybody out of the truck. Won't go back with us. And if I had that on audio, and I don't, so there's no proof. But the way I explain it to people, I try to paint a picture with words, sometimes because you can't get it across sometimes. This is going to sound bad. But when I tell people this, they have the reaction that I want. They may get it. So the scream it sounded almost human for a half second. It sounded male. It went up so high and lasted 8 to 10 seconds. Of course, we had reactions to it, but the only way I can describe it is if you took somebody and mentally tortured them for a week, then tied them to a tree and tried to saw their ankles off with a handsaw. Oh. And people look at me like, what? And I'm like, you get it. Okay, I got you to get it a little bit. Yeah. That's the reaction we had, was like, what in the heck is this? Yeah. So turn those recorders on, keep them, invest in it, buy you one that you can afford, but have it on. I mean, because the thing is, when you do get evidence, it's like scoring a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Maybe only 20 people is going to hear it, maybe just the people that were there. But what happens is, when we got back home the first time, we barely could hear it on the phone. But that's all I needed. It's for you mainly, because when you hear these things, you're like, did I just hear that? Right. When you can go replay it, you know that you did. So that's, we've had some crazy stuff happen. And that's just a kind of a, quick version of it, because I could talk for hours. But
right. Roger, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I know what you're about to say.
Do you have the full 30 minutes recorded?
I do.
You do? Why
and it's
dude.
Well, what it is, it's not all hows and calls, but I went and got Mark Green, Flat Rock, Justin, who had a recorder out, and there were 5 of us standing there in the dark. No, it was totally pitch dark then. Well, I kept it running because just in case something happened, and I went back and did a show where I was talking to everybody, and and I haven't listened to it all, but when you're bouncing ideas off each other, and I was nervous and scared, but I wanted to document it to have it like what happened after. Oh, here's a funny thing, y'all. So while we were standing there, before I went back to camp to tell everybody what just happened, where we were standing, now it's getting almost dark. Where we were standing, it was kind of a little hill, little rise there. So if you were standing there, JB, and you had a black jacket on, I would probably be able to see the jacket up, right? The bottom of the jacket up. Well, we didn't know it, but there's a guy who had walked from camp. He had to use the restroom, and here we are standing there, so he had to go further. When I turn, all I see is this black figure.
Oh, my goodness, dude. That must have
I'm like,
freaked you
oh
out.
my God.
Yeah.
I jump. Oh, yes, because I'm already on edge. But I zoom in on him and get I can't see it really good there, but we went back to camp and looked at it. And I told the guy, I said, I think I have a man walking, but we need to figure out who it was. We
Right.
did a head count and we went around and asked everybody. The guy was like, that's me. So I looked at his clothes. We zoomed in and I said, yeah, I can see your shoes actually. So,
Okay.
and I was pretty sure, but it scared me. I was pretty sure, that's one reason I left the thing on. That's a good lesson. If I hadn't had it on and I just got a glimpse of him, I could have mistakenly said, hey, I think I saw something over here that might have been, so we ruled it out.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
keep your video rolling, keep your audio rolling. You can rule things out. And that's the main thing. You don't want to ever put something out there that's not, you can say, now, I don't know what this is. Y'all, you be the judge or whatever, but I don't want to ever mislead anybody. So, but we talked about it. So we have this whole conversation between all of us going, and then we find out that there are recorders out there. And yeah, it was just amazing. We left soon after that because I was on edge a little bit. But yeah, I mean, but the thing is, you have to go to where the possibility, we've been Land Between the Lakes twice. We go here. We got a couple places here we go. This was the first time at Holland Hunter Camp. You guys can look up the episode. I don't know what number it is that you did on that. But where they talk about that incident. Well, that's where we were. And I asked Mark, I said, how far away was the body found? He said, you saw the text. I sent you the text. He said, you're about 100 yards from where we were standing when we caught the audio from where they found the body. And he went, when he does investigations, he's just a regular guy like all of us, but he'll go and he'll talk to the police. And he got a copy of the official police report. And it said that the hunter was killed by, I think it said unknown animal or unidentified animal, something like that. So,
yeah, if you want to
yeah.
listen to the episode, guys, it's episode 255 of Bigfoot Society with John Burton. And it's a wild story. And dude, I don't know if I would go to that area knowing that I was 100 yards away from where that happened. Like, I know you didn't know before you went, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't. They're like, hey, come on down, have a good time with us, camp out. I'm like, okay. And as soon as I get there, if you see, there's a guy who goes by Michael X in the chat and a lot of the shows.
Okay.
I hadn't met him at Land Between the Lakes, and he comes up and starts telling me the history of the place. I'm like, wait, what? He said, yeah. He said, there was a tent. Listen to this. I don't know if this was on the episode or not, but he said, yeah, right here, the opposite way, right down there, Mark and I don't want to misspeak Mark. I just put Mark and maybe some other people came up here. He said they came up here a while back, and there was a brand new tent down here. There was a purse, ID, makeup, men's accessories, everything was left. Somebody left here in a hurry and left everything and never came back. So I'm like, no, wait a minute. And he said, yeah, and then the hunter was killed right over there. And I'm like, what hunter? What are you talking about? And he said, you didn't know about the history of this place? I'm like, obviously not. I was standing here. I would have been, I don't like that where it gets violent, right? I mean, that's just, that's asking for it. So yeah, it's an amazing place, and it's, there was a lot of activity. Sounds were, possible tree knocks. There were recorders. There's an abundance of howls and screams, and of course, some of them are, they're coyotes and stuff like that. But I've heard some already that strange. I heard one that there was two sounds, and to me, it sounded like somebody maybe doing a call, a guy doing it, and I'll be honest with them when they send it to me. But there are some that are just like, I don't know. And if you put them on the spectrograph, the spectrograph, the numbers don't lie. So anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. If you know how to read the spectrograph, That's where you can really tell if stuff is a Bigfoot vocalization. And Ontario Richardson helped me out a lot with that last August, September. She's a great researcher in Iowa. But,
she's a great source to have. I actually send her the sounds to go over, and she was happy to do that. And her and somebody else without a spectrograph, actually, their opinion was that it could be this, this, and this, and it was exactly what the spectrograph showed. So they went over it and had the kind of the same conclusion. I'm not going to say, nobody's saying what it exactly is because you can't. But the thing is, footprints can be faked, which it's hard to now because people are smart. They go do research. You can tell if it's fake if you see it online. Photos with AI can be faked. Video can be faked. All of this stuff, is sketchy nowadays because of the technology. But the sounds, I don't know. I don't think that can be. It may can. But the thing is, with me, we were there. We were fortunate enough to catch it. If I hadn't turned my camera on, or had waited 3 minutes, it would already been going on. And when something's happening, you ever try to take a picture of a grandkid or one of your kids, and they're doing something cute, and by the time you get the camera on, they're out in the driveway somewhere. You're like, so when things are happening and it's scary, it's hard. So yeah,
it's nearly impossible to get your phone out that quick to take a picture of a Bigfoot. From what I would guess, I've never tried it, but
Well, the thing is, just think about real life. If you see some of you see a bird or something you want to get a picture of, and by the time you get something out, you can have it there with you. Now, unless you have your camera locked and loaded and right there on your chest, but most of the time when people have encounters or screams or hollers or visuals or whatever, they're not expecting it. 99% of the people are more than 99%. They're not expecting it. So, and Greg made a great comment the other night. I laughed, but to put this in perspective, somebody said, well, why don't we have a clear picture? We have clear pictures of all these other animals. He said, well, let me put it to you this way. You go to a zoo. You go to a big zoo somewhere out west in California, or you go somewhere in the southeast, and you're looking at the animals. There are gorillas, there are giraffes. Let's take the dangerous animals. You stand outside that cage, you get all the good, pretty clear pictures you want. But if I toss you inside that cage, how many pictures you gonna get? So that's kind of sums it up.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy, but it's wild stuff. Oh man, Roger, it has been fun chatting with you, my guy. I appreciate you.
Sir.
We've got it's crazy. We've got 170 people watching right now, man. They're having a good time. This is a record, I think. But guys, if you're not subscribed to Squatch and Holler, go do that after this. Make sure you're subscribed. It's great content, great Bigfoot content. So thank you so much for calling, Roger.
Yes, sir. Anytime. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Talk to you.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. Good stuff. Roger is a great guy. Great guy. We got over 170 people watching live. I appreciate you all being here. Just a reminder, this is Bigfoot Encounters Live from Bigfoot Society. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter and you would like to call in, you can first fill out the guest release form. All right, party time.
Gordon Bland.
To accept, press 1. To send a voice...
Hey, Gordon.
Hi.
Hey, this is Jeremiah. Were you able to fill out the guest release form, Gordon?
I went through and read a a form and signed some things and clicked agree and
Perfect. Yep.
and yeah,
You got it. Thank you,
yeah.
sir. Well, thank you for calling in. I am gonna, if you would be able to turn down the sound on the, I can hear it in the background just to make sure there's not an audio loop.
Let's see here. Does that help?
Yes, sir. Yep. And it sounds like the chat can hear you as well. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give it over to you to share what you would like to share today, Gordon.
Okay, thank you. Well, anyway, I'm 63 years old. I enjoy the outdoors. I love camping, and about, 45 years ago, I had my own kind of a strange encounter with, all I can describe it as maybe an alien UFO type situation. I won't go into that detail at the moment if you don't want me to, but I say that to preface my interest in paranormal related things, because after that occurred, I became interested in those kinds of things and try to figure out what in the world was going on. And I really didn't give much thought to the whole Bigfoot thing that was out there. I just thought it was kind of just a bunch of silliness, and we kind of made fun of that sort of thing. And the odd part is about 2 years ago, I started kind of watching a few YouTube videos on missing people, David Paulides and Missing 411. Some of that stuff was interesting to me because I like to go hiking and backpacking and camping and that sort of thing. And so much of that stuff was going on in the national forest parks. And so it got my ears caution, my antenna caution up, and started thinking about that a little bit. And anyhow, to make a long story short, I thought to myself, well, I need to get out to some of these national forests and just do some solo camping and just see what happens. Had a little bit of a risk profile to my life, riding motorcycles and various other sundry things, much to my wife's chagrin. But anyway, I decided I'm going to just go to a national forest that's fairly nearby. I live in Texas, and I'm going to go to the Lyndon B. Johnson LBJ National Grasslands. And I thought, well, that's probably a pretty safe bet. Don't really see that there's any reports of any Sasquatch or anything on the BFRO that's anywhere nearby. And so I thought, well, if anything, I can enjoy the camp out. I can enjoy this new, freedom. I don't have to pay. Just have a nice getaway. I went midweek. It was in November of last year. I still have a little square drop camper I pulled behind my Toyota Tacoma. I drove out, found a nice spot as far away from society as I could find. It was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, I guess you could say. It was at one of the campsites. It had a couple of fire rings, and it was nice and secluded. And I'll just back the camper up in there, and I did, and set up all my gear, had everything going. Had a great day. Just the weather was nice. It wasn't too cold yet. Made dinner, had dinner, sat by the fire. And as the sun began to go down, what was kind of strange is there really wasn't any noise in the forested area. They call it the grasslands, and it's kind of deceiving because there's grasslands, but there's also some forested areas. And I was kind of in that area because I like to have some forest around. It's kind of nice. And I started hearing as it got dark, I started hearing the coyotes going crazy. I've heard coyotes go crazy before, but it was kind of odd because they were just it was like more coyotes than normal is what it sounded like. And they were just hooting and hollering and making all kinds of racket. And then after they finished, I heard this kind of I don't even really know how to give it a good description. It just sounded like a guttural, kind of a scream. It was both a kind of a low guttural reverberation along with a high-pitched screech kind of thing. And I was thinking, man, that is the strangest thing I've ever heard. And I didn't give it too much thought as far as thinking, well, maybe this is some kind of a Sasquatcher thing. I just kind of thought, well, that's odd. And I did feel a little bit uncomfortable, though, as I was sitting by the fire after that happened. And I decided I was just going to kind of call it an early night and not keep stoking the fire. And so as I noticed that the fire was down pretty low, I kicked a little bit of dirt on it, and I went into the camper and I locked the doors. And I had not been laying down for more than about, 20 minutes, I guess, kind of just trying to relax and think about going to sleep. And all of a sudden, whack, there was like it sounded like a large rock hit the outside of the camper. And I was just kind of like, I was startled, and I had brought my weapon with me. I had a 10mm pistol, and I just had my hand on it. It was just it really had me startled. And the strange thing at that point was that I had remembered listening to some episodes from like Sasquatch Chronicles about people having episodes with these things where they throw rocks. And when that happened, I thought, well, maybe it's just some strange kind of coincidence or something. And, it's nothing. It's got to be nothing. And there wasn't any other campers, I should say, around me. There was no campers out there. It was pitch black. I didn't hear any sound. There were no cars, no car lights. I peeked out the windows. I didn't see anything. So I laid down, and again, I still had my hand on my gun, and I was just a little bit disturbed about what happened. And then all of a sudden, wham, another one hit, but it was a lot larger. And it sounded like it hit right next to the fan on top of my camper. And at that point, I was struck with fear. I haven't felt fear like that, and I don't even know when I felt fear like that. I just listened, and I was rigid. I couldn't move. I just didn't know what to do. My camper was completely, all my jacks were down on all four corners. The camper was not on the truck. I didn't want to jump out and try to get in my truck and try to make a run for it. I didn't know what was out there. I didn't know if there was like this creature or if there was more than one. And so I basically laid there for about 4 hours waiting, and just with this fear and anticipation that what is going to happen next. But nothing ever happened. I guess I fell asleep, and I woke up the next morning. I didn't get out of the camper until the sun was full up, and I got all my gear together as fast as I could, and I drove out of there. All I could figure is that perhaps I had encountered one of these beings.
Gordon, the way you're describing it, it definitely sounds like you probably did. That's wild, especially the call being, let's see, I wrote it down, where it was a low reverberation, but also a high screech at the same time.
Yes.
That's something I've heard close to that a lot. Yeah, that is wild. A lot of people will report there being some kind of yell or scream that sounds like two different things at once. And Squatch and Holler put in a good comment here. It said, "Whatever throws a rock has to have thumbs." Absolutely right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And everybody that I have shared it with, that be my wife, my kids, a couple of people at work, that was a mistake. I had a few negative things happen because of that, and a few people making fun of me because of it. But I did have a few others come up to me privately and express that they had had a couple of encounters, one of them from California.
Really?
And made me feel a little bit better, So, but yeah, I mean, I was just shocked. I mean, I can't believe that this thing is out there, that it exists. I say I can't believe it, but I do believe it. I mean, I'm afraid to go camping alone now, at least in way off out in the boonies.
Did you ever look to see if there'd been any other Bigfoot encounters in that same area?
I did. I looked to see if there were on the BFRO. I looked to see what counties that the LBJ National Forest was located in. And after I found those counties, I went to those counties on the BFRO, and I did see that there was one. I can't remember if it was Wise County. I can't remember which county it was, but there was one that was fairly near the national grasslands. So after that occurred, I should say this. I did share my story on the LBJ National Grasslands on a Facebook group. I don't know if I should have said that or not. But I did it anonymously. Oh, gosh. But anyway, I had a couple of guys on there come back and wanted me to message them about my occurrence there. And they had expressed to me, one of them actually expressed to me that he believed it was a Sasquatch encounter, that he had had some experiences in the LBJ Caddo, the Caddo National Forest.
Yeah.
So it was, it's just so strange to think that this is going on. Just so bizarre.
It really is. And
that nobody seems to find a body, nobody can find or seems to be able to capture one.
That's right. Yeah.
But,
from what you said, though, it sounds like you definitely you experienced something, and I would say it probably leans more towards being a Bigfoot, the way you described it. But Gordon, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate you sharing what you experienced, and there's another area for me to remember and for our listeners to remember as well. So,
all right. I appreciate you letting me call in. Thank you.
Have a good night, sir.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. What a interesting call from Gordon. Thank you for calling in, Gordon. We'll give it a few minutes here. See if there's any other last minute call-ins here. Okay, let's see.
Greg.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Hi, this is Jeremiah.
Yes. Are you doing a platform live right now?
Yeah, absolutely. What was your name, sir?
Bigfoot? My name's Greg.
Greg, nice to talk to you. And did you happen to fill out the guest release form, Greg?
I started to write something, but my event is like so long that I can't even write it.
Okay.
Any length of time would take me forever. But something about not making fun of people and that. You mean like 5 different questions you asked?
It's a guest release form so that I can use the recording. So,
I did not.
Okay. So if you could
I
make
did not
sure that
fill it
you,
out.
if you could fill that out afterwards, that would be awesome.
How do I even do that?
So there's a
I'm
website.
looking at your.
Yeah. If you go to the website bit.ly/Bigfoot forum, then it's a Google form that you just fill out a few pieces of info, and you're agreeing that you're okay that you're being recorded for the podcast. So.
All right. You can send it to my Google, my Gmail account.
All right.
Yes. It's a galloping one, GALLUPING 1 at gmail.com.
Is that O1E spelled out or just the number one?
Just the number one.
All right, cool. I'm going to send that over real quick.
I just caught you guys here for 5 minutes of as I was watching here and I saw it was like a live podcast. Obviously, you can tell I'm not very tech savvy.
Oh, you're good.
So hold on a second here.
All right, I got that sent off to you. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Greg, and whatever you'd like to share, the floor is yours.
Give me 1 second here. I'm missing my headphones. I can see you guys, but I cannot hear you. I had to grab them real quick. My story is very, 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 let's say, unique. It happened in 2004 in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. What happened is I'm an adventurous type guy. I'm not afraid to do things on my own. And I decided to climb the mountain, Mount LeConte in the Smoky Mountains. And I started up the mountain late, like 3:30 in the afternoon. So like 11 miles round trip, through the mountains. Not easy to do. And I stayed too long on top. There were a bunch of other people up there, but they were all staying in the cabins they have on the top of Mount LeConte. And so I ended up being the only person to come back down off the mountain, and it was getting very late. As I came down, I realized that I was going to be in the dark with no flashlight under the canopy of about a mile and a half of mountain laurel, extremely dark when there's no sunlight. But before I got there, before I went through the little tunnel to come out into that really dark area, I had this feeling come over me is that I was imminently going to die. Like I was in the process of going to be killed. And I don't know where that feeling came from. I had never experienced anything like that before in my life. And I basically stopped. And what daylight I had, because I hadn't made it down the canopy quite yet, I could still see. And I looked off to my right, and I saw what could only be described as a Cherokee Indian in full garb looking right at me. I mean, face painted, bow and arrow, whole 9 yards. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But in the process of seeing him, something told me to look to my right. And as I looked to my right, coming down the trail, right behind me was the biggest Bigfoot you'd ever want to see. I mean, he had to have been 10 feet tall, and he was massive. And he was coming, and like I said, I had this feeling that death was imminent, and I basically was not going to survive this moment. And when I turned and looked and saw this thing coming right at me, he was still probably 40 yards away. And I caught eye contact with him. And one of the weirdest things ever happened was he was very surprised that I could see him. Like I saw it in his eyes, like he was very shocked that I had the ability to see him. And at that moment, for some crazy reason, whenever I was able to see him, everything kind of like subsided and the fear of dying went away. It was no longer something that I was going to have to face. And I basically lost all fear of this event, of what was taking place at that moment in time. And the next thing that happened to me was I realized I still had to go to a mile and a half through the canopy in complete utter darkness. but as I went through the darkness and made it out, thank God I was in great shape at the time and, able to traverse things. It was difficult, but I made it out. One of the things I realized when I was in the dark undergrowth, there was no other animal noises. There was no insects, no noises from any animals at all. And it's August. And so that was something that struck me as being very strange. And nothing else happened. I made it back to my car. I got out of there. This is a story I've only told once of any type of event to any websites or anything before. I sent it to David Pallades, Can-Am Project. Never heard back from him. Did it like a year ago. And seeing your live podcast, I wanted him to bring it on there that I've had an experience that 99% of your other people have never had. And I also had the notion and idea that I was going to die and there's nothing I was going to be able to do about it. And like I said, this Bigfoot was massive and he never, like I said, when I saw him and he saw that I could see him in his eyes, it just, something happened. The notion that my death was imminent was no longer. And to this day, I don't know why this happened. I don't know what became of it, but it was something I'll never forget. And it changed my life from the perspective of going down that rabbit hole. There's more that goes on in this world than you'd ever realize. And so like the story is, though it was quick, there was a lot of things that happened in a short period of time. And like I said, I can never forget what I saw. It's ingrained in my brain to this day, even though it happened 20 years ago. I'm still totally aware of what happened and where it took place and the whole notion of just a very strange experience. I was going to be one. There's only been 5 people in 50 years that disappeared in the Smoky Mountains and never found a trace of them. I was going to be number 6. There's no doubt in my mind there was never going to be a trace of me. And my kids were young. My wife would have thought I ran out on them because this thing was going to take me and I was going to die and they were never going to find me. So that's my story. Crazy it may seem. I'm one of the few people that's ever experienced something like this and lived to tell about it, knowing you were marked for death, and it did not happen. And whatever intervened on my behalf, I have no idea. Why the Cherokee Indian was there, I think he was there on my behalf to say, look out, it's coming for you. And for some reason, by being able to notice him on the trail really changed everything.
Greg, that's an incredible story.
Well, I know. I tell people that I know personally. I'm not afraid to talk about this. I don't care what people think. But like I said, I don't know why I was marked for death, but I was by myself. It was very. I was still above the canopy, not far away from it, so I could still see. But yeah, I never. The thing that's shocking about all this is the fact that my seeing him changed the whole, complexion of what was going to happen.
Right.
He was very shocked, very shocked. I could see it in his eyes when I looked at him. But, personally, I, think that God stood in for me that day. That's the only thing I can say. I was in the wrong place, the wrong time, and by myself. And I was like going to disappear from this earth.
Wow.
That day, and it never was allowed to happen. Ultimately,
were you able to get a good look at the Bigfoot's face when you saw it? Yeah.
Yes, I saw him completely.
Okay. Do you remember any details about how the face looked like to you?
It's like what they call it, the conical head. So like the spear, like skull kind of go up like in a spear like that. He had a conical head, and he did have the features of a man too, though. Like his eyes and stuff were, people say they see like a gorilla, whatever. He wasn't totally gorilla like. He definitely had some features to them that you would not expect to be like gorilla like the eyes and just the shape of the face was a little bit different than what you would expect to see. And like I said, he wasn't 8 feet. He was massive. He was a 10-foot tall, giant thing coming at me. That's why the spiritual side came into being, because I never would have had this feeling of utter dread. Like I've never experienced before, and I've been in a couple bad situations in my life before. I've never experienced anything like that, and so it just came out of nowhere. I wasn't in fear when I was coming down the trail. It was a case of I need to get out of here as fast as I can, and I was trying to do that. But then when that happened, I stopped and tried to figure out what was truly happening to me.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think the whole Cherokee Indian thing was the spiritual side of things. Like, I think that, they obviously were at odds with these things in those mountains for centuries. So I think that's why he was there, to warn me.
Do you have any Native American heritage, Greg, that you're aware of?
I do not.
Okay. Interesting. Yes.
I do not.
There was a question from Jen in the chat, and I thought that was interesting. Interesting question. Do you remember anything about the mouth? Did you see mouth or teeth?
Yeah, he was completely. He was dark. Okay. He was very black. There wasn't any reddish brown, and he was a very black Bigfoot. He had the hair, the long hair, fur, like stuff, and like he was fully haired. Like there was no like bald spots on him at all. Like he was completely black. Maybe the hands, like you could see a little bit of lightness to the hands, and that the lips. As I sit here and look at him right now, because I'll never forget my view. Even it was a split second. They were dark. The lips were dark. And like I said, the nose, as they talk about him sometimes. I wouldn't say there's anything that really stood out about that. But you have to remember, it is dusk. And I'm looking at him with what daylight I had, but I could make out his features of size, the hair, the conical head, the facial. His face was predominantly covered with hair. It wasn't a lot of like open skin or seen. There was a lot of hair around his face, and just his eyes and nose and mouth, was exposed from the hair itself.
Interesting. Would you ever want to see this again, Greg?
Knowing what I know now, I don't fear these things like other people do. As I said, it's made me a lot more aware of there's a lot going on in this world that you don't understand. I understand a lot now, and I do not fear them and will never fear them again, because I've learned about the aspects of what they are and who they are. I've kind of gone down that rabbit hole, and there's a lot more going on with this than people really want to realize. And that's from the standpoint, this is where you're going to shut me down and not want to hear the story anymore. But there's a spiritual aspect to these things that people don't understand. They are not just physically very powerful. There's a spiritual aspect to them that's powerful. That's why I started to fear the dread and the total, just like I don't stand a chance moment came over, because their aura kind of like starts to follow them where they go. It's like some people are never the same after they run into these things, and I've decided to learn about them. I've decided to dig, and I have a biblical perspective on this that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but it's the only thing that can make sense. They're never caught. If it's anything, it's black ops that goes and takes these things down. But there's never any discovery. There's never any bodies, like other than a few times you hear things. I think there's a lot more than meets the eye. There's definitely the government, I think, knows more than what they let on about the stuff.
I agree.
It's more like black ops,
100%.
And they try to keep it under wraps. You know what they are.
I agree that the government probably knows more than they're saying, which right now is really nothing. They're not really saying anything. But
you know what they are.
I would assume you're alluding to like the Nephilim.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. They're Nephilim. They have technology. They have capabilities. And that day, God stepped in for me and basically said to this thing, "You're not killing him. You're not taking him." It was stopped right then and there. God intervened and said that you are not going to kill this person tonight. It is not going to happen. He stopped them. That's why all fear subsided, and I was able to turn around and continue on and try to be as safe as I could, considering I was going to be in complete darkness. There was no sound around me. The other thing I had to fear is black bears,
Right.
going down into their territory, and never heard anything from any animals at all. And, I'm a hunter. I hunt. In the woods, I do a lot of things, and it was very strange. Everything was so quiet. I mean, was that thing following me? I'll never know, but he wasn't allowed to touch me. I promise you that. And I didn't have fear of dying anymore. That did not enter into the equation. I did not fear this thing. I feared more of a black bear running across its path than I did this thing. And, you would think that would change me forever in my life. It just taught me that there's a lot of strangeness in this world that a lot of people don't want to understand. It's not a matter of can't understand. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know what's happening out there because they love their, to live in their little worlds, and there can't be all these other side ventures. I mean, why does it exist? I don't know. I know it's a spiritual warfare between God and Satan, and these Nephilim are an abomination unto God. And, they are basically forever damned because of the consequences of the sin that they were created through. And they do kill people. They come up missing. I mean, it's more prevalent in other areas in the Smoky Mountains, but they are in the Smoky Mountains. I've had other times when I've been there where I had an uneasy feeling, after 2004, 2008, I felt something was like around me. But it was broad daylight. I never saw anything, but I had an uneasy feeling. And like I said, they're in the Smokies. It just, not much happens with respect to people coming up missing, but they're there. So that's my story. I, really have never gone national with anything. I did try to do David Pallades. I was very shocked that I spent 4 or 5 page paper, and he never responded back. It's been a year, and it kind of ticks me off because the story is unusual, and it's one where I was basically marked to die, and it didn't happen. And usually, if I think you're marked to die, you're going to die. But being a Christian, God intervened on my behalf.
Absolutely. Do you listen to the show, Greg?
I do not.
Okay, so I would recommend you listen to a recent episode, number 417, with there's a researcher from the area down where you're at. His name is Harley Owens, and I think you'll find it very interesting. He's in the same viewpoint that you are about what these creatures are. So I would recommend you check that out.
I will. We're 17. I will have to do it. I did have one other case that happened to me at my own home.
Oh, really?
I live in Pennsylvania. It was wood knocking. I was walking with my dog on the back side of what I call the Black Forest. It's like this mile-long oval road that goes around, and it's all hemlocks. And I was out there, and it was March of 2016. It was still snow on the ground. It was windy. It was cold. But I was taking my dog for a walk, and I'm not afraid to travel down the back road at night or whatever. It doesn't bother me. But as I walked down and got further down, I heard very distinctly 5 wood knocks that, like, I knew there was no person in the middle of these hemlocks at 9:30 at night, on a cold, windy night. And nobody was playing tricks on me because I wouldn't even do that. And I'd be the one that would play these pranks. And I had 5 distinct wood knocks that were very solid and very hard. It wasn't trees going against each other. It was distinct wood knocks. But the one thing I know how to do now that I didn't do then is I rebuke them in the name of Jesus Christ. They have to run. They cannot stand when you stand in the power of Christ. They have to run. I don't care how big they are. They will leave the area. Never had a problem with it again. And I'd never have a problem with these things ever again. I would fear a black bear before I'd fear a Bigfoot because I know my spiritual stance. I know where I stand with Christ. And the power of the blood of Christ stops all of these things. They can't stay. They have to leave. So, people ever run into problems that are hiking or doing something and they hear noises, whatever. All right, maybe a bear's around. But the one thing you can do is just in the name of Jesus Christ, I rebuke you and force them to leave. And they leave. because standing beside you could be a 30-foot angel that you don't see, that they do, and they know better. So the power is in the blood of Jesus Christ. I might sound like a really good Christian. I have my faults. I'm not exactly the strongest guy, but I do believe in the blood, and I do believe in the power. And these things
Absolutely.
can't stand. UFOs can't stand. They can't stand around. It's just too much. A lot of people would have turned me off right now, but I know where I stand with, like Christ, and I understand more about why these things are around. And I know it's a spiritual battle that's going to culminate in the end here soon, but it's still taking place as we speak.
I agree with you, Greg.
People don't ever.
I agree with you.
All right. I'll let it be at that then.
Thank you for
I won't
calling
say
in.
any more about this.
Greg,
All right. Well, let people know.
I mean, one of the best calls I've had for sure. If you could take a minute, there's the description for this episode on YouTube. There's a link at the top for that guest release form. If you could try to fill that out tonight, that would be awesome. I would love to be able to use this and, get this, what you shared, out to a lot more people. That would be great. So thank you so much for calling in.
It's yeah. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, Greg.
Okay. Talk to you later. All right. Bye.
Uh-oh, it's party time. Hi, this is Jeremiah.
Hi, Jeremiah. This is William.
Hey, William. How's it going?
And I have pretty good. I had a story of a sighting for you.
Oh, sorry. Real quick, William, I want to make sure people can hear you in the chat, so I'm going to wait for someone to say that we can hear William. So we'll give that a minute. Have I talked to you before, William?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Well, pleasure to talk to you. And were you able to fill out the guest release form?
I did.
Awesome. All right. Yes. Okay. We can hear you. So, William, I'm so glad you called in. I'm going to let you go ahead and share what you've experienced to help everyone else.
Okay. So, actually, way back in 1980, so it's been now 44 years ago, I guess, I was a college student, and I was working as a lifeguard at a lake in Arkansas called Blue Lake. It was just across the river, Mississippi River, from Memphis. So it was in eastern Arkansas. And what we would do, I was working as a lifeguard, basically. Like it was like a swimming, picnicking, camping, kind of a place. Anyway, after you've got a map of it. I see it there. You're very close to it. It's almost at the Tennessee-Mississippi state line border, just across, on the Arkansas side. At any rate, it's still there. I knew the people who owned it, and I worked for them as a lifeguard there for some time. And one of the other lifeguards and myself, that's there it is. I see it on your screen now. We're out fishing one night. We would go out and take like a small boat, John boat type thing, out with a trolling motor. So we're fishing very quietly, probably 10, 15 yards offshore. We would be just paralleling the shore, and we're quiet. We weren't talking. Close to sunset, but still very light, probably 7-ish in the evening. And this was June of 1980. And we heard some rustling, I guess, on the bank, beside the where we were drifting from. We looked up, and there was something in the bushes that we could see from basically shoulders up. We couldn't see anything below that. That looked kind of like a person, but it had hair over everything but the face, and stared at us for a few seconds or so, but it's certainly enough so that we got a pretty good look at it, and he got a pretty good look at us. I got sort of the impression that we had startled him, or we had surprised him because we were coming up slowly and quietly. Anyway, looked at us for a few seconds, turned around, raced back into the underbrush. It was very wooded, very heavily, lots of heavy underbrush. We heard him for a few seconds, him or her, for a few seconds. Never heard any vocalizations or anything like that, but it clearly was not a man, something unknown. At any rate, so I've been interested in the topic since then. Actually, I was interested in it before that. I actually saw the Patterson Gimlin film way back when it came into the theaters back in the late 60s. But that was the sighting that I had. And I've been on a couple of Bigfoot hunts since then in recent years, but I've never seen anything like that again. Like I say, I can't swear that I know what it was. I don't think it was human. And there are no apes, living in Arkansas that I know of. But that's pretty much what it was. That was the summary of it. It didn't last longer than 10 seconds or so at the most. But the view was unequivocal. In other words, we could see it very clearly. It was still daylight enough that there were no shadows on the face or the shoulders. And it was clear, that we saw something that we didn't understand.
Did you seeing that, did it put any emotion in you at all? Did you start feeling a certain way?
Well, we were a little scared. We were out there at the lake by ourselves because, like I said, this was after we closed the gate at the lake. We kicked all the swimmers out, and every evening we did that. So he and I were out there by ourselves, and we were scared. I remember after that we kind of went on back down to where our little cabin was, where we stayed, which is maybe half a mile away from where we saw it. Went back up into the cabin and closed and locked the doors, and we didn't even talk about it for the longest time because we didn't know what to say about it. I won't say we were, what's the right word? Anything other than both scared and surprised. We didn't know what to make of it, just exactly.
And were you able to see any details of the face of what it is that you saw?
Yeah. The face and the down to the shoulders and maybe about nipple level were visible, but below that it was obscured by bushes and stuff, the undergrowth along the shore of the lake. So the face, as best I can recall now, I can see it in my mind, was outlined in hair. In other words, the forehead, the cheeks, the chin, and obviously eyes and nose were hair-free, but they were dark, I won't say directly black, but very dark brown. And it was, I thought, something close to human looking. If you had to compare it to a human or an ape, it was probably closer to human than ape. So, which is another reason why we didn't know exactly what we were looking at. So it was, it had two eyes, more or less normal sized nose, and more or less normal sized mouth. And like I said, the face itself was free of hair, but the top of the head, the sides of the head, the shoulders, the chest were all covered in fur.
Do you remember what color the eyes were? Roger is asking in the chat.
Just dark is all I remember, really. It could have been brown or black, but just dark, really, is what I would say.
Were they? Did they have pupils like a human would, or were the pupils really large? Or
I don't know if I can really say that.
Sure.
I don't. We were, like I say, 15 yards away from it, and we were out in the water on the boat, and that was up on the shoreline. So I can't really say that.
It's a very interesting account in that, it's a quick account, but it puts another dot on the map for sure. So I appreciate you calling in order to share what you experienced, William.
Well, you're welcome. There's been 2 or 3 other reported encounters in that area. One just across the river on President's Island. There's been a couple others in that general vicinity, but not many. I wonder if it's they're just like passing through there. I don't think there's like a colony there like there are maybe some other places.
Hold
just
on.
like come through there occasionally because it's very wooded and that's, it's passed through.
Did you say President's Island?
Yes, which is right is in the Mississippi River, directly below Memphis. It's like an industrial complex, but it's also got a fair amount of undeveloped area. In fact, you can probably find it on your map there that you're looking at now. And there's at least 1 or 2 reports there.
Yeah. There was another caller that called in a while back about having an encounter in this same area. Because I remember the President's Island.
Yeah, President's Island is probably less than half a mile as the crow flies from Blue Lake.
Oh, man, that's wild. That is really crazy. I'm looking at the map real quick. This scroll is...
Yeah, that's Blue Lake that's looking at now.
What are the other lakes by Blue Lake? Do you remember?
So just to the south of that is Horseshoe Lake, which is much more developed than Blue Lake, and it has lots of homes and marinas and stuff like that. Blue Lake is privately owned. The family that owned it when I was there had sold it a few years later, and it's still privately owned, but I don't know who the owners are now.
This is wild because from what I remember, and this is like a while back that someone called in, I'm pretty sure it's the same lake area. And, a guy called in and they saw, because this is the first time you've called in, right, William?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is wild because it's a very similar report in this almost the same exact area. And I can't remember the exact episode that was, but I did have another caller call in this same area. So definitely try to find that in the archives.
Yeah,
it's in one of the live episodes. It's
all that's in the floodplain of the Mississippi River, so it's uninhabited.
Okay.
So there's an area of maybe 2 or 3 miles back from the river that is totally, like I said, uninhabited and covered by cypress and pine trees. So there's a lot of area to hide out in on either side of the river there. So which is why, and when the river's high, you can actually go by boat from Blue Lake to the Mississippi River over to Memphis if you wanted to.
Interesting. I definitely have to keep this area more in mind now that I've had 2 people call in about it for sure. William, any other observations about the Bigfoot in this area, William?
Not really. Like I said, we didn't hear any vocalizations. We didn't smell anything. We had never seen anything before or since. I mean, we would hear sounds out there, but, we always attributed them to coyotes or something else, so nothing I could really be definitive about.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you calling in, William. Definitely let us know if you hear about anything else in there in the future.
Sure thing. Thank you so much.
All right. You have a great night, sir. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, I'm going to use this space this week to announce that I'll be at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon as an attender. I won't be presenting or anything, but I'll be hanging out, trying to interview people that have had Bigfoot encounters. If you're from the Oak Ridge, Oregon area or surrounding and you've had a Bigfoot experience, please contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, Priscilla was nice enough that if you get your tickets through SasquatchSummerfest.com and use code BigfootSociety, you can get 50% off the cost of your tickets, which is a big amount. So code Bigfoot Society to get 50% off your tickets, SasquatchSummerfest.com, and helps out the podcast as well. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. I had a listener comment, hey, what's a current update with the road to getting to full-time? Well, here's the deal. The push, as if you've seen on social media, is, well, now I've kind of tweaked it a little bit. So by my calculations, once we get 824 people in the Patreon, we should be good to go. So what I did is we're going to do it a little bit differently. It's now adding the current amount plus the amount that are joining, and there's tons of people joining every day. It's wild, guys. So right now we're at 176 members are in there, ready to go out of the 824 that are needed in order for us to go full-time. That puts us at about 22%. So if you've been putting around back and forth the idea of joining the Bigfoot Society Patreon, now's the time. I'm telling you, it's time to check it out. $7 a month starts. It's $15 a month as well. But $7 a month is a great place to start. Patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And if you can't swing that, please just share the show with your friends and make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube as well. But thanks again so much for listening, guys.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.